Fred, today's episode, we're going to talk about news in the UFO field and anniversaries. You know, I like to do this occasionally well, once a year, just talk about what anniversaries fall. So this is 2016. So what happened, 50 years, 30 years, 80 years ago. So let's just cover the history.
One of them was I graduated from high school.
What year?
66.
66, okay.
Right.
All right, so there you go. 66, we're going to talk about that year.
Yeah.
There were 5 UFO-related things in that year that were very important. So, as far as these anniversaries go, so 80 years ago, and this is actually very significant, in the Black Forest of Germany, there was a UFO crash in 1936. So that's 80 years ago.
Right.
And they were said that the Germans got that and started their back engineering, which kind of, explains they did have, after World War II, we got their files. They had the Haunebu series that they were working on. Those they had jet rockets, the Bell project that we've talked about in other episodes, and Operation Paperclip really did come up with a bunch of technology from the German scientists who then were given immunity, came to the United States and started NASA and our rocket program.
And
so
Walter von Braun.
So this thing in 1936 could very well be real, of a real UFO crash 80 years ago that got the Germans heading down that, that path. Let's jump to 1966, your year, 50 years ago. There were 6 things really that happened in that year that's significant. The first one, we'll go kind of in date order, March 14th to the 17th in Michigan. We had a bunch of UFO cases there. And this is 7 police officers, 100 civilian witnesses are seeing UFOs over Michigan. Right. And J. Allen Hynek actually got involved in this, and it's a very famous case because it's the one that he said it was in a swampy area. Right. Well, this was nothing but swamp gas.
That was Exeter, right?
No, this is the one in Michigan. So he says it's swamp gas, and it really hurts his reputation because now everybody's laughing at him. The media's making fun of him. What's swamp gas? I mean, I get swamp gas every now and then. I don't know what swamp gas is, So that hurt his reputation. But Congressman Gerald Ford, who went on to be President Ford, asked for and got congressional hearings on this. Yeah, think about that today. You think we can get a congressional hearing? Never happened. No. Never happened. We were much more open and truthful back then than today. So then we came upon 2 other cases I want you to talk about. April was Portage, Ohio, and July was Presque Island. So tell us a little bit about those 2 as we cover 1966.
Well, anyhow, Portage County happened on April 17th, 1966. Yep. And it was, let me put my glasses on here. Okay, it was Deputy Dale Spar and his associate Wilbur Nurse saw a 30 to 45-foot metallic object approach over the treetops from the woods, bathing the witnesses and the whole area in light and making transformer-like hums. Okay, well, what happened? They had chased this thing all the way into Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
All right, and it was actually an 80-mile run they made.
Into Newcastle, Pennsylvania, right?
Well, no, they went to...
Okay, don't matter.
Yeah, Brady Run, they lost sight of the object of Brady Run and regained it again in Bridgeport, but then they lost it again there. But anyhow, along the way there was other officers involved in it. A lot of other officers saw it.
Like 7. There were a total of 7.
Yeah, and they all gave their statement. I mean, the majority of them even denied seeing it later on. And then Project Blue Book came into this, and they interviewed Spur and
Neff.
And they said that they was actually seeing Venus. And Spur and Neff said no, Venus was right next to what we were seeing, and they chased it. Okay, their dispatcher told them to chase it too. That was another one.
Yeah, they called it in and they were told to pursue it.
And another interesting thing, which not too many people talk about, okay, the 7 steps to hell. Okay, there was actually a van that they were looking at. That's where they were going to look at. And it had 7 steps to hell, and it had a lightning bolt. Okay, and it had like antennas and that all over it, and that's when they seen that thing. And nobody ever knew where that came from or where it went.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I mean, that's part of the story there. But like I say, what had happened then, I mean, they went down another Conway, they stopped at the Conway Police Department. One of the other officers ran out of gas there. I mean, they had like 3 or 4 cars chasing this thing. And like I say, the next day or a couple days later, I think Condon came up, or it was either Condon or...
Quintilla was the guy, yeah.
And I mean, they actually argued with him was what they saw.
Yeah.
And he says, no, you saw Venus.
It's amazing. You think about Project Blue Book, they discredited their own Air Force pilots. They discredited police. Is that what our government's supposed to do? Is that what the Air Force was supposed to do? Discredit their own people? Yeah, apparently. But is that what they're supposed to do?
Well, I think back then, though, John, I think, you know, the UFO stuff was...
They didn't know how to explain it.
No, and not only that, I think, you know, if you look at back then, every show that came on TV in the 60s, was these things getting out of the UFO and climbing around and killing people.
Creatures and scaring people, yeah.
And I think this is another thing they were doing. They were doing this so that people wouldn't get involved with this stuff if they'd see it or whatever. And
you mean creating movies to scare people that they were monsters? You know, I never thought about that.
And they would not go around them. If they, you know, seen one, they'd just run and report it.
Well, tell us about Prescott now. So that's Portage.
Prescott Island, it occurred on July 31st of '66. There was 2 couples and 2 little kids, a 6-month-old and I think a 2-year-old kid. They came from Jamestown, New York, and they went up to Prescott Island, Beach 6, I think it was. Okay. And they had their little picnic in that. And as they was getting ready to leave, the car got stuck in the sand. So one of the gentlemen, LaBelle, we met him up in Erie.
Yeah, he was just at our Erie conference. The public's got to come to our conferences.
Right, you meet both of them.
Yeah, and Tibbetts, yeah.
LaBelle says, well, he hitched a ride. He was going to go get a tow truck and come back. So they were all sitting there, Tibbet and the 2 ladies, and the park rangers came by, and they said that they didn't get the tow truck by then. They'd come back and they'd help them out. So in the meantime, they said they seen a star-like. They're sitting in the car and they're looking. They see a star-like object in the sky, and it came down. And they said when it came down, the car vibrated in the whole 9 yards. So at that time, a couple of minutes later, here comes the park rangers. So Tibbetts gets out of the car to take the park rangers where he's seen this come down at. Well, within 2 or 3 minutes, the 2 girls in the car say they seen what appeared to be something that looked like a gorilla, 6 foot, was walking around the car and putting scratch marks on the car. And they start screaming, blowing a horn in the whole 9 yards. They came running back, and when they came running back, the ship took off. Okay, so that was it. Next day, well, they made the car stay there that night. They wouldn't move the car. They wouldn't do none of that stuff. They interviewed, the chief came out. He interviewed them, and he believed their story. Then all of a sudden, the state police come out the next morning to investigate, okay? And they took casts of, there was indent marks where the craft had landed. And then there were footprints, possibly of some type of animal by the name of Bigfoot, okay? And a lot of people said, no, it was a bear, but, and they did that, and then there was some kind of a liquid there that the military said it was nothing when it was all over. But they sent I'd like to read this part here. They sent a lieutenant or sergeant. Okay, Sergeant Earl M. Schroeder, USAF, Niagara Falls International Airport, also investigated this case. He reported after carefully analyzing the facts as told to the Air Force by people involved in this sighting and from his personal observation of the concern and environment that they lived in, he concluded this incident was very well a hoax, concocted by 3 persons involved in the investigations. He also stated that being a native of this area and spending a great deal of time hunting and fishing in this area, he believed the so-called monster, if there was such, could have been a large black bear, as bears are not too uncommon in this area. Well, the chief of police up there said there has never been a black bear in that area.
Yeah, on Prescott Island.
Right. So, I mean, it went on and on and on. So the final Air Force statement, well, Project Blue Book got involved in it, and the final Air Force statement of the case declares that raccoons and bears are known to be in the woods at that area. The Air Force analysis of the wet sand claims that there was nothing unusual in the soil samples that were taken. Nobody's ever seen them but them.
But didn't they confiscated the samples because the state police were making it, and then the Air Force guys kicked dirt into those and wiped out the footprints.
Right. Okay. Well, this is another Project Blue Book thing. I mean,
unbelievable.
I mean, they destroyed all the evidence they could destroy if they could.
Unbelievable.
Okay. Okay. Major Hall, he was also one of the ones that did the investigation. He reported that Chief DeCenio, Superintendent Wargo, and each police officer asked him separately if there had been any kidnappings by UFOs. Of course they're going to say no.
Yeah.
Why would they ask that question if there was any kidnappings? Is it possible they were actually coming down to abduct a few people? He reports they were all extremely interested in this aspect, but he would not tell them why. July 31st, 1966, the night of the Tibbetts-Clem sighting. Now they concluded, number one, the lights were unidentified, okay? The indentations were not related to the sighting. Now, how could the lights be unknown and the indentations are not related to when the lights and the indentations came in the same place? Yeah. And the monster, probable animal, was not related to either one of the two. It was just a bear. Well, why would the bear come around and then run away and then nobody seen him? Yeah. I mean, so again, I mean, it's, this was an unknown.
Well, we've done episodes on both Portage and Prescow. Right. So, I mean, some of these other ones, we may have to do an episode on it. So then what happens, that's July 31st. 3 weeks later, August 20th, you got the Allagash, Maine. Right. So there's like a pattern here in 1966, right? These are 4 guys on a camping trip that get abducted, and under regressive hypnosis, they describe a UFO, 4-fingered grays, just like this one here, and them being tested and everything. So then that's July, August. You know what happens in September? Big event. The debut of Star Trek. Which, but to me it was a big deal, and I'll tell you why. What happened with Star Trek was, a very interesting storyline, was, do you know who owned Star Trek, the series? Lucille Ball. Oh, yeah? Desilu Productions. Lucille Ball owned Star Trek, and she basically, after 2 seasons, went bankrupt because she so believed in the series that this was a significant show. She ends up selling Desilu Productions to Paramount, who bought it. They hated Star Trek. Season 3 was already underway, so they let season 3 go, and then they canceled it immediately. So what happens is then the reruns and everything, it turns out that Star Trek turns into a multi-billion-dollar moneymaker for Paramount, who didn't even want it. Gene Roddenberry quit Star Trek after 2 seasons, after what was going on. Right. Somebody else did the 3rd season. He didn't do the 3rd season. And Lucille Ball, who died in 1989, she was able to see Star Trek become very successful with a new TV series and movies. But that was hers. Can you imagine that? Yeah. That was hers, and it cost her her studio. So I like to throw that in because that was my favorite show, was Star Trek. Some of the other, and then to finish out 1966, November of '66 is the first Mothman sighting. Right. A white bird man with red eyes, who later on hung around for about a year until that Silver Bridge collapsed down in Point Pleasant. Was he talking about the one in Clendenin or whatever? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, where's the Silver Bridge? Is that? That's in Point Pleasant. Yeah, Point Pleasant. Well, that's where he was hanging out, but they seen him, they were digging a couple graves, or a grave or something in Clendenin, and that's where they seen him. Oh, okay. And what is it by the TNT plant down there too? Well, not the Clendenin. Yeah. The TNT plant down in Point Pleasant where he hung out at. Okay. But they also seen one up in Charleston a few months prior to that they said had a dog head. It actually had a dog head, like the dog man today. They said this thing had a dog head. These descriptions to me are almost paranormal, Oh yeah.
Again, John, they're all interdimensional.
I agree.
This thing has no mother, no father, no brothers, no sisters. Where'd it come from? It didn't come from a one-cell protozoa.
A flying man with red eyes.
Right.
You know, what
And
the heck
fly.
is that? That flies.
It shoots straight up in the air.
Yeah. So, so then also to stick with the anniversaries, that's 1966. If you jump now to 1996, so this is a 20th anniversary, you have the Virginia, Brazil case. Do you remember that one? Where these kids, they see these creatures and they have red eyes. You know, they kind of look like the Greys with red eyes and kind of lumps on their head, almost like a spinal cord type lumps. And they start throwing, all the kids start throwing rocks and stuff at it, killing one. And the EMS guy, they pick it up, and the guy who touched it and put it in the ambulance, all of a sudden he gets respiratory failure. He dies. He's like in his 20s. This guy dies from handling this creature down there. So that was a huge case. And that actually started the chupacabra legends that were in Brazil and Puerto Rico. And the last one, as far as the anniversaries go, it would have been 10 years ago, the O'Hare Airport anniversary.
So we went straight up.
Yeah, where they saw the UFO. It actually shot straight up and burnt a hole through the clouds, completely denied by United Airlines until someone brought forward the audio recordings between the tower and the people with their walkie-talkies. It's recorded discussing the UFO case. So, you know, we know it was real. And when I was on the Anderson Cooper show, Joe Nickell, you know, he goes, well, that's a hole punch cloud. And I said, hey, Joe, could be. They're very rare. Except it has to be freezing temperatures, and it was 53 degrees that day. It's not a hole punch cloud, you know?
Well, I think the government still to today, again, I kind of think like you do to a point, a lot of this stuff is there to make us believe things, and they're not really even real.
And they're working on something else. Got us looking here, they're working over there.
Right.
You know,
people are gullible. Number one, when you tell them about UFOs, they kind of look at you like you're simple. But tonight, like I said, I'm giving a presentation down in Washington, PA. And you know, the people in there, they'll just sit there in awe, like, oh my God, really? And then they walk out and they forget everything you told them.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, it's, you know, like, and a lot of them, I think, like with this stuff here, they'll come to these meetings and that, just so they can go back to the senior citizen home or go to the town where they hang.
It's entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, it's what it is. I mean, except when they land and, you know, you see one, then I tell you what, you're going to bark rabbits and, you know, do whatever. But I believe, you know, there's something out there. I mean, I don't know what it is.
Oh, it is, and it's interdimensional, you know. And I think some come from space. There are really good cases where it appears to be ships from space with people in uniforms, you know.
The FBI said in 1947 that the aliens or the extraterrestrials are interdimensional creatures coming here that can go back and forth into their dimension.
I agree.
And they mean us no harm.
Yeah. I don't know about the mean us no harm part because there's some malevolence to this. So let's talk about some news items now that are very interesting. This woman I know, remember the one who went to the Erie conference a year ago with me? She's unpacking stuff from her aunt's house, and she sees this old article from 1973. Right? And she sees UFO. So right away she grabs it and looks at it. Here's the article from 1970. She gives it to me, and it's talking about a UFO wave, and there was a big UFO wave in 1973. Right. And they're talking about in Hawaii, in California, in different places. So I'm reading this, and then they talk about Chillicothe, Ohio, Sheriff's Deputy Dale Gillette. They captured a spaceman who was completely wrapped in aluminum foil, and it turned out to be a 15-year-old kid. Isn't that the case that happened in Alabama with Chief Greenshaw? Remember, he took the picture and the guy. Right. So was there two cases in 1973 like that?
I think there were three of them.
Was it? Well, I'll give this to you. You can maybe look into that and see.
Greenshaw, they've had people analyze the pictures that he took and what he said, and they're believing now that everything he said was actually true.
Yeah, they burnt his double wide down. Unbelievable. Here's something out of the news that China is developing a mind-controlled car that you work with your brain with 16 sensors that is used. But, you know, that was like Roswell, the crash.
Right.
There were no controls. It was done with their brain. So
Right.
I give that to you. Here's something else I came across. Very interesting. Michael Shermer is the head of publisher of Skeptic magazine. But he was interviewed about a paranormal case that convinced him there's something to the paranormal, which is interesting coming from the head skeptic. You know, what happened was he met his fiancée. She was getting her stuff from Germany shipped over, and in it was her grandfather's 1978 transistor radio. So they get married. It's a couple of months later. I guess the day of the ceremony, they hear music playing. So the only source of the music is this transistor radio. That you know, 1978 transistor radio all of a sudden starts playing music in 2014. Think about that. It's 36 years old.
Did it have batteries in it?
Yeah, batteries last 36 years, right? So Sherman's daughter said she also heard the music coming from the radio just before the ceremony started. The fiancé had said, "Oh, I wish my grandfather could be here for my wedding," because he had just passed away. So this, to Michael Shermer, was one of those moments that he couldn't explain away. And he kind of became a believer that there's something else going on. And there is something else going on.
I think a lot of people have these moments, but again, they don't want to admit them because they're afraid what people's going to say.
Yeah, everybody's afraid of, I'm not afraid of public opinion. You know, we're not. But so also in the news is Hillary Clinton. Right, that she's going to disclose the UFO secrets, you know. And Stephen Bassett has put a lot of pressure on her because we know in 1995 she was at Lawrence Rockefeller's ranch, and one of the discussion items was UFOs. Right. And here is a letter sent from the Rockefeller Foundation, Rockefeller Plaza, to John Gibbons, assistant to the president for science and technology, talking about UFOs. She attended that. So the interesting thing was that, you know, Rockefeller back in 93 to 96 had the Rockefeller Initiative. So at this meeting was Bill and Hillary Clinton, Al Gore, Bill Richardson, John Podesta, Webb Hubbell, and Leon Panetta. All big names. And in 95 they had this meeting, and there's a picture of Hillary carrying a book. And you can see on the book as she's carrying it, it's Paul Davis's book, Are We Alone? A UFO book. But yet she's always claimed to, and Bill has claimed they were never told anything. And, you know, Rockefeller funded Don Berlander, who put out the UFO briefing document that was actually sent to the White House. Everybody received a copy of that. So Bassett, you know, Hillary now, because she's backed in a corner, says she's going to disclose. And Bassett's jumping up and down saying Hillary knows more than she's telling, and she is going to disclose. But
I think she does. I think, you know, I think that all presidents kind of know things. I mean, it's like, you know, when you take Eisenhower, when he wanted to go out to 51, you know, they told him he can't go, he don't have the clearance, and he says, well, okay, you know, he went and told his staff, he says, well, get the 1st Cavalry ready, because if they don't let me in, we're going to jump in and we're going to take it over.
Well, to show how she knows more, she made that same comment. She says, I'm going to send a joint task force into Area 51 to get the truth. She only said that because she knew Eisenhower had threatened it. So she does know a little bit more.
Well, I think the presidents do know, but again, you know, they are sworn to secrecy the same as the rest of the people there. And if not, you know, look at Kennedy. Kennedy was supposed to have been involved in a lot of UFO stuff too.
Absolutely.
And he was knocked off 2 days after he told the CIA he wanted all the information on him. So I mean, is it possible they killed him?
Yep. Lastly, we're almost out of time. I want to talk about, we're not going to get to Gray Barker and Albert Bender, which is an interesting story, but we will get to that because I have some information in here. And we talked about Gray Barker's book, but I just found out that Albert Bender wrote a book, and I got it delivered yesterday. Flying Saucers and the Three Men. This is the source of the Men in Black. And so I'm going to read this, and we're going to talk about that in a different episode because it's important. But the last thing we're going to cover, because we can't get to that, is the last news item is there's a group out there called FREE. the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, free. And Edgar Mitchell was involved in that before he just passed away. So they did a survey, 2 surveys to 3,000 people, and here's their findings. And to me, the findings are a little dismaying. One, because I know the guy who runs this, and he is 100% says the abductions are positive. And of course, the research now proves that it's positive. And they got the outcome that he wanted, basically. But, you know, here's what they say was that, think about 75% of the abductees reported the abduction as positive. That's impossible to say that, you know. 85% underwent a major transformation after it, which I agree with, right? 33% experienced an abduction, 15% remembered being aboard a craft, 80% had out-of-body experiences, 50% reported some sort of medical healing. These results are just way pie in the sky, wishful thinking. But what they saw were human-looking beings, not the grays, right? So then when they went through as to who saw grays, what was seen was 22% saw reptilians, 11% saw grays, insectoids 9%, 7% ghosts, 6% saw Nordic humans. But what the bulk said, they were human-like spirits that they had seen.
I think too with that, like an abductee becomes an experiencer. I think when they're first abducted, I think you're probed in the whole 9 yards there. After you become an experiencer, you're actually friends with them. So,
well, you bond, just like the Stockholm Syndrome.
When you go on a ship, they're not going to do nothing to you. I mean, it's going to be a friendly experience.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me finish this. We're almost out of time, Fred. 66% had telepathic messages. 13% said they were involved in some sort of breeding program. 35% had near-death experiences. 83% said that they felt that they were in touch with the spirit world. 95% said this was a paranormal experience. So I think what this guy tapped into here was not the alien abduction. What he tapped into was something else that had to do with spirits, with angels, etc. But he basically got the results that he was looking for, and I'm concerned that this report could become a modern-day Robertson panel or Condon report, getting people to think the abduction is good when it's not good. But what came out of it was, what's positive is nearly all near-death experiences, contact with Nordics or angels are positive. Negative is contact with the Greys, Bigfoot, shadow people, Slender Man, reptilians, and insectoids all end up as negative. So last word goes to you, Fred.
How do you get Bigfoot in there?
Well, I threw that in because, I know, are there positive ones with Bigfoot?
Well, yeah, I mean, Bigfoot would never beat the hell out of anybody. I mean, you know.
Well, don't they grab people in the woods and stuff? I've seen in shows.
They what?
Don't they, they'll grab women and stuff? Hasn't that happened?
I haven't heard of it for a long time.
Well, we're going to do an episode on Bigfoot and abductees. So there we go. So that's it. I mean, these shows go by so quick. We'll cover this in another episode. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Thanks, Fred.